So this is about Ron Howard, the actor slash film director. Ron Howard is going to shoot Hillbilly Elegy in Georgia, but vows that he'll do the boycott if the abortion bill goes into effect. So Ron Howard has a big problem with Georgia's new abortion restriction, but not with people of the Peach State. The Oscar winner is the latest prominent filmmaker who will move forward with production in Georgia, but make a donation towards the fight against a restrictive abortion bill recently signed by Governor Brian Kemp. Howard and his Imagine Entertainment co-founder, Brian Grazer, confirmed the film Hillbilly Elegy will shoot in Georgia next month after much thought and deliberation. They vowed they won't consider production there if the law, known as the Heartbeat Bill, goes into effect at the start of 2020. We felt we could not abandon the hundreds of women and men whose means of support depend on this production, included those who directly contribute to this film, and the businesses in the community that sustain the production. So keep in mind, Georgia, the film industry is very big in Georgia because they made a bunch of tax cuts, or they gave a bunch of tax incentives for Hollywood to film there. So there's a ton of film. I believe Walking Dead is done in Georgia. So there's a ton, because I mean, first of all, Georgia has a very desirable land. Like it has, just a lot of, it has coastlines. It has like different terrains that can pass for a lot of different places. So Georgia is a desirable place to film, and the state wanted to really tap into this. They give a lot of tax incentives. So filming is a big part of Georgia's economy, especially in Atlanta, where you do have a lot of show business going on in Atlanta. Cartoon Network has a presence there. CNN has a presence there. That's going on in Atlanta. So filming is a big part of Georgia's economy. Here you have Ron Howard who's saying, look, if this goes into effect, we will ban. As of right now, we're not going to pull the plug on what we've already got in motion because we don't want to screw over all the people whose livelihoods depend on this project going forward. And that's a tough line to toe. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up as a conversation point, I know a lot of artists, like musicians, comedians, stuff like that, are talking about what's going on in Georgia, what's going on in Alabama. And something that always comes up in stuff like this is, do we ban, do we boycott performing there? And I know some colleagues of mine that have said yes, they're not going to perform in Georgia and Alabama, if these laws go forward. I do not participate in those things. I do not participate in boycotts of states as a performer. And here's why I don't. I don't because I know that I am not an economic impact on a community. I'm not famous. I'm not some huge draw. I'm very much a niche thing. I'm not going to have an economic impact on a community if I boycott a place. So I actually don't, just for the record, I happen to not have any dates scheduled in Georgia or Alabama right now, just because, that's the region. We had already done that region. It's not coming up for a little while now. But if I did, I would not cancel those dates. And moving forward with my tour itinerary, the next time, that I play the Southeast or that Graham Elwood and I play the Southeast, I would not boycott those states. So I don't have any dates there right now, but if I did, you get the idea. And the reason I don't participate in those is because, again, I'm not an economic impact. I'm just not. So me boycotting those states, and the people who would want to see me are most likely people who are being hurt by this. Most likely people who fought against this. So to me, if I were to participate in that boycott, I wouldn't be doing anything to the powerful people that made this happen. It's not like they would be like, we're going to review our annual budget, and we really got to talk about Ron Placone canceled a show. That was a hit. Maybe we got to rethink this abortion thing. We can't have Ron Placone canceling shows every year. Holy fuck. That's not going to happen. What is going to happen is that people who live in those places, and maybe, just maybe, going to my show would be one night where they can kind of forget what they're surrounded by, and they can kind of laugh in a room full of like-minded people, and they can laugh at left-wing comedy and kind of just forget for one night and meet some like-minded people in their communities that maybe they're going to become friends with. So if I can kind of give that one night to people, that's one thing I can do to help. So if I were to say, well, I'm not going to come now because of this horrible law, I don't see that as me, doing anything to the powerful. I'm not harming the powerful there in any way whatsoever. All I'm doing is saying to the people who would want to see me, I could give you a night to make you feel less alone, but I'm not going to. So that's the way I see it. I know some people disagree with that. Some artists don't see it that way. They see it more as strictly a principle thing. But I don't look at it that way. And the reason I don't look at it that way is because I know what it's like to live in a red state where you are trying so hard to hold the lines on things like women's rights, on things like, just basic human rights and liberties, and how hard it can be because of, the grip that the GOP and the far right has on your state. I know what that feels like. I used to live in Tennessee. I know what that's like. So to me, it's like, I don't want to punish the people who are there, who want to have things better in their state and who are going to suffer because of this. So that's the way I look at it. So bringing it back to this, when you are a big film production that does have economic impact on a place, well, you have a harder judgment call. Ron Howard has a much harder judgment call than Ron Placone. For me, it's just like, I'm not an economic impact. Why would I punish the people who, might want to just enjoy a night of comedy? Those are the people I want to meet. Those are the people I want to show up for. So, but for Ron Howard, this has an impact. If a huge production doesn't come to the state, that has an impact on the state. Now, the tough judgment call they have, if we already have wheels in motion and we have people who are on set whose livelihoods depend on this, do we want to punish them? Because they're going to hurt from this too. And I think, just kind of looking at this, it looks like Ron Howard, I think, made a pretty good call. He's like, okay, look, we're not going to punish the people. We already have these wheels in motion. We're not going to punish everybody by pulling the plug. But in the future, we ain't coming. And if somebody maybe has a film project where they're considering a couple different locations, nothing has been solidified yet, and they say, hey, Georgia, we decided not to pick you, and the reason we decided not to pick you is because of this law. So you're hurting your state. That's a different course of action. Because that you're actually getting in the face of the powerful there, because you're doing something that's hurting the state's economy. So you're saying, look, if you're going to do this, so that has some potential to actually affect a lawmaker's decision. A Ron Howard production does. A Ron Placone show does not. So anyway, I thought that'd be a fun conversation topic. Let me see what you guys are saying about it. Maybe some of you disagree with me, which is fine. Let me know if you do. The boycott has to be tourism, says Doug. I don't know what that means exactly. You mean like people shouldn't go on vacation there? Like, what do you mean by that specifically? M. Berg agrees. That makes sense, Ron. Have to agree. You can boast dissent against the law. Martin says, so Ron Placone Inc. is not a multi-billion-dollar entity? Not according to the IRS. Shh. It's punishing fans for the actions of non-fans, says Brian. I agree. Use the platform in a state that isn't hearing your position, says Edwin. Let's see. Solid reasoning, Ron, says Martin A. Gutter Dandy says, makes sense, Ron. Tony says, instead of boycotting, perform there and say something to open hearts and minds. If only I could. Let's see here. Doug says, Ron Howard made the exactly right decision, in my opinion. I think so, too. I think so, too. So I'm curious if anyone... Because I understand the other side of it. I mean, I have some friends and colleagues who are, they're saying it's got to be a principle thing. We're not going to perform in those states. I just don't see it that way. I see where they're coming from. I respect their decision. They have the right to make that decision. But I don't look at it that way. And 42 Belvedere says, strategies like this only work if lots of big names and big events collectively do it. Let's see. The point is to create pressure from the outside for change. I agree.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and